The Arctic wind howled like an ancient voice, carving through the white silence as Ilara peered into her microscope. For years she had chased perfection. 6 arms, infinite symmetry, and a fleeting sparkle of geometry born from cold and chaos. Yet tonight, something shifted. A snowflake shimmered under polarized light, revealing an impossible pattern. 8 flawless branches radiating like a celestial compass. Jonas called from across the lab, his tone cautious, but her heart was already racing faster than the storm outside. This wasn't a glitch or a misfocus. It was an entirely new form of ice, one that defied every rule nature had written. As she captured the image, a strange pulse flickered across her instruments, as if the flake itself breathed. For the first time in her career, she wasn't sure if she was looking at a crystal or a message. But what she discovered next would defy the laws of reality itself. By dawn, the Arctic sky was painted in soft pastels of pink and silver. Ilara hadn't slept. The microscope's glow had become her only sunrise. Every scan confirmed the impossible symmetry. 8 perfect branches, molecularly stable, yet outside known ice lattice models. Jonas stood silently behind her, the hum of the generator masking his unease. Maybe it's contamination, he offered, but she only shook her head. She'd cleaned every slide twice, recalibrated every sensor. The data refused to lie. Somewhere between heat, pressure, and quantum chance, nature had rewritten itself. She stared at the flake again, her pulse sensing with its crystalline rhythm, and whispered a single question that hung in the frozen air. What if snow isn't just frozen water, but frozen information? Hours blurred into data streams and repeating patterns. Ilara traced the snowflake's molecular lattice, finding geometric ratios that aligned with astronomical constants. Jonas laughed nervously, calling it coincidence, but she wasn't smiling. "There's order here," she whispered, something intentional. The monitors pulsed faintly, as if echoing her thoughts. Outside, wind lifted snow in spiraling currents, each flake twirling like a coded message. She saved another frame, another proof of the unexplainable, while the station's power lights dimmed momentarily. Jonas adjusted the cables, unaware that behind them, the captured image seemed to shift on its own. For a moment, the 8 branches rearranged, flickering into something else, a shape too deliberate to ignore. When the first transmission arrived from Dr. Lin Akari, Ilara nearly forgot to breathe. Lin's voice crackled through the radio link, layered with static and tension. "I've analyzed your data," Lin said. "Those molecular angles, Ilara, they shouldn't exist." Her tone wasn't disbelief, but awe. Ilara leaned closer to the screen, heart pounding. Lin continued, "If this isn't an artifact, it suggests the crystal formed under a quantum phase we've never observed in nature." Jonas met Ilara's eyes, his worry deepening into silent respect. The Arctic silence seemed to hold its breath with them. Outside, a storm gathered like a living thing, its pulse sensing with the data stream. And deep within her, Ilara began to realize she might not have discovered a snowflake at all, but the signature of another world. Night descended again, swift and merciless. The storm outside roared against the cabin, yet inside, Ilara couldn't look away from the snowflake's image. It shimmered as if alive, its crystalline arms shifting ever so slightly when she blinked. The hum of the equipment deepened into a near subsonic vibration that resonated through the floor. Jonas tried to speak, but his words drowned beneath the electric pulse that filled the air. For a fleeting instant, all monitors went black. Then one image flickered back, a close-up of the snowflake, but with a faint glow pulsing from its core. Ilara's breath caught. A whisper formed in her mind, though no one had spoken. She leaned closer, her reflection merging with the image. The camera light dimmed, leaving only the luminous 8-pointed crystal, and then it blinked. Sleep no longer visited Ilara. Each night blurred into the next as she reanalyzed the same flake 1,000 ways. The image pulsed faintly, mocking her with its impossible balance. Jonas tried to reason with her, urging rest, but his words melted against the storm of her thoughts. She plotted temperature, pressure, and humidity against known ice phases, only to find herself circling the same anomaly. A symmetry nature had no blueprint for. Every data run deepened her fixation. She began to imagine the flake whispering through frequency shifts, its molecular bonds forming patterns almost like code. "There's intelligence here," she murmured. Jonas looked away, muttering about hallucinations and exhaustion. But Ilara wasn't delusional. She was listening. And somewhere, deep in the white noise of the Arctic, something was whispering back. Morning brought no clarity. The generator hummed with an irregular rhythm, its flickering lights pacing her heartbeat. Ilara compared the snowflake's atomic angles to archived crystallography files and found no match, not even in supercooled nitrogen lattices. Each new measurement defied logic. She called Lynn, her voice low and tense, describing impossible molecular resonance. Lynn listened in silence, then finally said, "If your readings are correct, the hydrogen bonds aren't behaving as matter should." Ilara stared at her data, the words pressing into her chest. "Then what am I looking at?" she whispered. Lynn hesitated, then replied, "Maybe not matter as we understand it." The line crackled and went dead. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm outside. Jonas couldn't ignore it anymore. He watched as Ilara redrew molecular maps by hand, covering every inch of the wall, with diagrams of symmetry and impossible physics. The snowflake, frozen under containment, seemed to hum softly when she approached. "It's just ice," Jonas insisted. But even as he said it, the air felt charged, resonant. Ilara tapped her finger against the data chart. "Jonas, these angles shouldn't hold in 3 dimensions. They imply curvature, like the crystals folding through space itself." He stared at her, trying to find the woman he knew beneath the mania. "You need to rest." She shook her head, eyes shimmering with obsession. "Rest can wait. Nature just sent us a message from somewhere colder than reality." Outside, the wind screamed, echoing her conviction. The next night, Ilara began an experiment to recreate the anomaly. She altered atmospheric conditions, mimicking the storm that had birthed the 8-armed snowflake. The lab grew colder, the temperature monitors dipping below recorded norms. Jonas watched her silently from the doorway, the glow of the aurora reflecting off his visor. Steam from her breath mingled with the fog of liquid nitrogen as she lowered the sample dish. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a flicker. A flake began forming, slowly, impossibly, 8-armed again. Ilara gasped. Instruments registered frequencies, vibrations beyond hearing. "It's happening again," she whispered. Jonas stepped closer, watching as light refracted through the crystal, casting alien geometries across the walls. They didn't know it yet, but the snow had begun to listen. At dawn, the storm outside went silent. The air itself seemed to pause. Ilara stared at the sample tray, where the second impossible snowflake now floated, suspended in stillness. The crystal pulsed faintly with internal light. "Jonas," she whispered. "It's responding to the magnetic field." He watched the readout spike. "Responding?" She nodded. "Transfixed. When I shift the field, the structure realigns." Jonas frowned. "That's behavior." The word lingered like a prayer. Ilara reached out a trembling hand, lowering the magnetic intensity. The flake rotated slowly, aligning itself toward her. "It's aware of us," she murmured. Outside, a single snowflake drifted past the window, 8-armed, identical to the one inside. Jonas turned toward the glass. "Ilara, it's spreading!" The air inside the station had changed, heavier, charged with invisible tension. Ilara sat before a wall of fractal projections, each one a variation of the 8-armed snowflake. She noticed something subtle. Every flake contained repeating geometries that mapped perfectly onto cosmic coordinates. Ratios found in galaxies, magnetic fields, even the DNA helix. Jonas tried to dismiss it as pattern recognition gone mad, but deep down he felt it too. "You're seeing constellations in ice," he murmured. "No," Ilara replied softly. "I'm seeing instructions." She highlighted a section where molecular bonds formed perfect Fibonacci spirals, as though nature had been coded to speak in symmetry. Outside, the Arctic wind screamed like static. Inside, the screen flickered, as if something, or someone, had heard her say the word instructions. By the third night, Ilara began feeding the data into an AI pattern analyzer. What emerged on the display stopped her breath. A spiral code repeating across multiple flakes, too precise for randomness. The program translated molecular coordinates into a waveform that resembled a pulse. Steady, rhythmic, deliberate. "That's not data noise," she said, her voice trembling. Jonas leaned in, frowning. "Then, what is it?" She watched the signal stabilize, its tempo identical to a human heartbeat. "It's communication," she whispered. The storm outside rose in tandem with the rhythm, shaking the walls. "Or," Jonas countered, "a coincidence." But even as he spoke, the monitors blinked twice, once for each of them, as if the ice had learned to reply. When Lynn received the new data, her usual calm vanished. "Ilara," she said through the static, "these harmonics aren't natural. They match the spectral signatures of high-energy plasma fields, like those seen in deep space." Ilara stared at the graphs, feeling her chest tighten. "But these are snowflakes," she whispered. "They formed in air," Lynn's voice lowered. "Unless they didn't." The connection flickered as the storm intensified and a low hum resonated through the floor, vibrating their instruments. Jonas steadied a microscope slide that began trembling on its own. The 8-armed structure within shimmered, as if alive. The hum deepened into a note just at the edge of hearing, an eerie, musical sound that seemed to carry intent. Ilara leaned close to the microphone. "What do you want us to see?" The following day, Ilara overlaid the snowflake's lattice onto Earth's magnetic map. The fit was uncanny. Each branch mirrored a polar resonance point. "It's as if the crystal knows the planet's structure," she whispered. Jonas stared at the projection, his skepticism cracking. "Are you saying the snowflake was designed for Earth?" She nodded slowly. "Not designed, tuned." They exchanged a silent glance before she pulled another data set, cosmic microwave background readings. The snowflake's pattern matched the frequency fluctuations of the early universe. "It's echoing the birth of everything," she murmured. The realization felt too large for language. Outside, a flash of light burst through the clouds, scattering new flakes, each reflecting the same impossible geometry. Night fell in absolute silence. The storm had stopped, but the snow did not. Outside, flakes drifted down in eerie unison. Millions of identical 8-armed crystals, descending like coded messengers. Inside, Ilara recorded each fall, overlaying trajectories and frequencies. A perfect synchronization emerged. "They're following a pattern," she breathed. Jonas whispered, "They're falling to a rhythm." The instruments began beeping in steady intervals, the data streaming in perfect mathematical timing. Every few seconds, the pulse repeated. 8 notes, then pause. 8 again. Ilara's eyes widened. "It's a message, Jonas." He hesitated. "From where?" She stared out into the dark beyond the aurora, where no stars shone, only endless white. "Not from where," she said softly. "From when?" For the first time, Ilara spoke her theory aloud. "It's not from space," she said, voice low and trembling. "It's from here, just Not our here. Jonas frowned, half expecting a smile that never came. You think it's from another dimension? She turned the microscope toward him. The flake's edges glowed faintly under polarized light, refracting impossible angles. Every atom is slightly misaligned, as if reality twisted for a moment when it formed. She traced the lattice on her tablet. If there are infinite realities, maybe one touched ours, just long enough for something to cross over. Jonas leaned back, silent. He wanted to laugh, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. Outside, a shimmer of light rippled across the horizon, bending snowflakes midair, like a curtain shifting between worlds. Dr. Lynn Akari's voice cracked through the static again, edged with disbelief. Alara, quantum field anomalies can't just merge. You're suggesting two universes briefly overlapped. Alara exhaled, frost fogging her visor. The data says it happened. The snowflake's hydrogen bonds aren't just misaligned. They're inverted, like mirror matter. Lynn's silence stretched long enough to feel like eternity. Finally, she spoke. If you're right, then that crystal isn't from our physical laws. It's proof another set of rules exists. Jonas shook his head, whispering, that means reality isn't stable. Alara looked out the window. Beyond the aurora, faint ribbons of light pulsed in symmetrical patterns, almost as if they were responding to her thoughts. Maybe it never was, she murmured. Alara began building what she called the mirror chamber, a modified containment dome using opposing magnetic fields to stabilize the anomaly. Jonas watched nervously as she calibrated the coils. If that thing interacts with our atmosphere again, he began. She cut him off. Then we'll see what happens when reality tries to correct itself. The generator whined to life. Inside the chamber, a single flake hovered in suspension. Its symmetry pulsed, shifting between 8 and 12 arms. Flickering like a glitch in time, instruments spiked. Air pressure dropped. For an instant, Ilara's reflection split in two across the glass, one mirrored fraction looking back with a delayed motion. Jonas reached for her shoulder, but she stepped closer, whispering to her own reflection. Are you me? The anomaly's energy readings spiked past safe limits. Lynn's warning voice echoed through the comms. Ilara, shut it down before it breaches the magnetic field. But Alara didn't move. Her eyes followed the crystal's impossible rotation. It wasn't random. It was aligning with something beyond their world. The snowflake's core emitted faint pulses in rhythmic intervals, forming an 8-beat pattern she'd seen before. It's mapping coordinates, she whispered. Jonas yelled her name, but the data feed had already begun projecting a geometric constellation, one not found in any star chart. The station lights dimmed. Outside, a new aurora flared, identical in shape to the flake structure. Reality itself seemed to ripple in answer, as if both worlds were holding their breath. When the energy finally stabilized, silence fell. The chamber's light dimmed, leaving only a faint shimmer hovering inside. A crystalline lattice rotating slowly in zero gravity. Ilara stepped forward, her expression caught between awe and dread. It's stable now, she said softly. Jonas exhaled, but Lynn's voice cut in, hushed and urgent. Ilara, your instruments. Look at the readings. She turned to the monitor. The atomic vibration frequency matched no known isotope. It wasn't ice anymore. It was something new, something never seen in the periodic table. Ilara pressed her hand to the glass. The lattice pulsed once, as though sensing her touch. It's evolving, she whispered. Jonas swallowed hard. Then what happens when it finishes? The snowflake flared brighter, the aurora outside mirroring its rhythm. Something had awakened. For hours, the new crystal hovered within the containment field, rotating like a silent galaxy. Ilara's instruments detected faint electromagnetic waves radiating from it, structured, rhythmic, deliberate. She adjusted the frequency analyzer, converting the signal into sound. A soft hum filled the cabin, pulsing in 8-beat intervals. Jonas froze, listening. "That's organized," he whispered. Alara nodded slowly. "It's communicating through resonance." Lynn's voice came through the speakers, urgent but awed. "Alara, if it's stable, it means you've created a cross-dimensional object. That shouldn't be possible." Alara's gaze stayed fixed on the glowing lattice. "It wasn't created," she murmured. "It found a way to exist here." The hum deepened, vibrating through the floorboards until every bolt in the cabin seemed to sing along. Jonas spent the next morning cross-checking the readings, hoping to find error. But each test confirmed the same impossible truth. The crystal emitted structured electromagnetic signals, encoded in prime intervals. "It's mathematical," Alara said, tracing the waveform on her screen. "Not random, not biological. It's communicating through physics itself." Lynn ran models from her lab across the globe. "The pulse repeats every 8 seconds. That's a deliberate pattern," she confirmed. Alara leaned closer to the monitor, breath shallow. "Then it's not a crystal. It's a transmitter." Jonas turned toward her, his disbelief melting into fear. "You think it's sending something?" She shook her head. "No, Jonas. It's answering." The signal grew stronger as the polar winds outside intensified. Each gust seemed to echo the rhythm of the pulses, like nature sensing with something unseen. Alara began recording the waveforms in infrared. What appeared on screen resembled intricate language, rings within rings, fractals that shifted with each iteration. "It's translating itself," she whispered. Jonas stepped beside her, silent, captivated. "You're saying it's self-adapting?" She nodded. "Learning?" Lynn's voice cut through the static. "Alara, your data spikes are matching local magnetic fluctuations. Whatever that thing is, it's talking to the Earth's field." Alara stared at the crystal, a flicker of fear finally crossing her face. "Then, Earth is listening." That night, Alara made the boldest move yet. She decided to interact with the signal. She reprogrammed the chamber's magnetic field, creating rhythmic counterpulses to match the crystal's pattern. At first, nothing happened. Then the light within the snowflake flickered and brightened, pulsing in reply. "It's responding," she whispered, voice trembling. Jonas stepped back, his heartbeat matching the rhythm. "This is insane." But Alara couldn't stop. Each pulse grew more complex, forming fractal spirals that looped endlessly. Lynn's voice returned, thin with static. "Alara, you've started a feedback loop. If it keeps synchronizing, the field might collapse." The lights flickered. Snow outside whipped into chaotic swirls. "Then let's see what it wants," Alara said, and increased the signal strength. The world held its breath. The chamber roared with energy, wind tearing against the cabin. The aurora outside twisted into perfect symmetry, mirroring the snowflake's pulse. Every instrument spiked off scale, Alara shouted to Lynn over the comms. "The frequencies converging. Look at the pattern!" The fractal light froze mid-motion, then unfolded like a blooming flower, revealing a complex array of numbers and symbols. Lynn's voice, faint through distortion, whispered, "That's not random. Those are coordinates." Alara stared, realization dawning. The numbers corresponded to a location deep beneath the Arctic ice, directly under their feet. The crystal's glow dimmed as if waiting. "Jonas," she said, voice trembling, "I think it's showing us where it came from." And for the first time, he believed her. The coordinates burned in Alara's mind long after the glow faded. Beneath the Arctic ice, the signal had pointed to something buried deep. Something ancient. The next morning, she and Jonas suited up for a descent through the frozen tunnels. "If it's real, we'll find the origin," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes hollow with sleeplessness. The storm had cleared, replaced by a silence so complete it felt unnatural. As they descended, Jonas watched the snowflakes falling around them. Each one identical, each one 8-armed. "It's spreading," he murmured, "like it's replicating itself." Ilara didn't answer. Her instruments began to pulse in rhythm with their steps, like a heartbeat rising from below. She whispered. And somewhere in the frozen dark, the earth seemed to answer back. They reached the cavern hours later, where the glacier opened into a hollow space, glowing with its own pale light. Embedded within the ice was a vast crystalline formation, an exact, colossal replica of the 8-armed snowflake. It pulsed faintly, alive. Ilara pressed her gloved hand to the surface, and her instruments lit up with readings that shouldn't exist. Quantum energy levels beyond any known source. This isn't frozen water," she said, voice cracking. "It's frozen light." Jonas stared, transfixed. "You mean it's been here, waiting?" She nodded slowly. "Maybe for us, maybe forever." Then, as if hearing her, the giant crystal shimmered, sending ripples of light through the cavern. Above them, the aurora flared brighter than ever before. Back at the station, Lynn's voice crackled through the comlink, nearly lost in interference. "Ilara, I've analyzed your readings. The energy signatures match quantum phase shifts predicted only in theoretical physics." Ilara looked up, stunned. You mean quantum tunneling on a macroscopic scale?" Lynn replied. "Yes, but not from this side. Whatever that thing is, it's bridging two realities." Jonas stared at the floor as the implications hit him. "You're saying that's a doorway?" Ilara turned toward the window, where snowflakes still fell in identical symmetry. "Not a doorway," she said softly. "A mirror." The containment crystal on her desk pulsed once, as if agreeing. For a heartbeat, her reflection in the glass didn't move with her. The following night, the aurora turned blood orange, its light pulsing like a living heartbeat. Ilara recalibrated the mirror chamber to match the frequencies emitted by the buried crystal. The signal sensed instantly. Instruments screamed with data overload. Jonas shouted over the din, "It's breaching resonance threshold!" But Ilara didn't move away. She was entranced. Through the containment glass, she saw faint outlines forming. A landscape reflected in the crystal's glow. An Arctic world, just like theirs, but reversed, its colors inverted. "It's showing us the other side," she breathed. Lynn's voice cut in faintly. "Ilara, this isn't a window. It's a merge." The reflection began to ripple outward, distorting the walls around them. Snow inside the lab lifted into the air, weightless. Reality trembled. And then, it happened. The barrier broke, not with a sound, but with a shimmer. Every flake of snow inside and outside the station lifted simultaneously, suspended midair. The aurora expanded until it covered the sky in fractal symmetry. The mirror chamber erupted in blinding light, and for one impossible second, Ilara saw herself, another her, on the other side, surrounded by identical snowflakes. Their eyes met, and both smiled in silent awe. The light surged, then collapsed inward, leaving the cabin dark and still. Jonas gasped, scanning the room. The containment dome was empty. The crystal was gone. Only the frost remained, arranged perfectly in an 8-pointed pattern on the floor. Ilara stood frozen, whispering. "It didn't vanish." She looked out into the falling snow. "It went home." The world after the breach felt different. The wind was still, but the air hummed softly, like a living pulse beneath the ice. Jonas found Ilara standing outside the cabin at dawn, eyes lifted toward the faint orange remnants of the aurora. "You should rest," he said gently. She didn't answer. Tiny snowflakes drifted past, each glowing faintly before fading, each one 8-armed, identical alive. "They're still communicating," she whispered. Even without the chamber, Lynn's voice came through the comm link, shaken but calm. Satellite readings show atmospheric changes over the entire Arctic, the patterns spreading. Ilara exhaled, eyes glistening. It's teaching the planet how to remember. Jonas stepped closer. Remember what? She looked toward the horizon. That it's not alone. Inside, the equipment hummed weakly. The data still streamed, though the chamber was empty. Ilara watched the monitors as the same fractal pulse repeated across every frequency band. Air pressure, magnetic field, even human heartbeat. The pattern had become universal. It's synchronized, Lynn reported. Whatever crossed over didn't disappear. It integrated. Jonas frowned. Integrated into what? Ilara turned to him, eyes bright with revelation. Into everything. Into the structure of matter itself. The realization left them silent. The snow outside drifted sideways, drawn into perfect spirals. Lynn's voice softened through static. Then what does it mean? Ilara smiled faintly. That maybe the universe isn't expanding. It's remembering how to fold back in. That night, Ilara sat alone at the microscope again. The glass slide beneath her lens was empty, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something invisible lingered there. She turned the focus knob slowly. A faint shimmer appeared. Tiny, transient, almost shy. Her breath caught. Another snowflake, 8-armed and luminous, materialized out of thin air. Its structure pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and steady. She whispered, "You're still here." The flake responded, vibrating faintly before evaporating into mist. Jonas entered quietly, watching her. "You think it's aware?" She smiled, eyes wet. "You think it always was. We just didn't know how to listen." Outside, millions of flakes fell together, each one carrying the same impossible design. Like a chorus of light singing back to creation itself. In the final transmission from Lynn, her voice trembled with awe. "Ilara, we've confirmed it globally. The atmospheric crystallography has changed. There's symmetry appearing in places it shouldn't. The world's snowflakes are evolving." Ilara closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. Jonas looked out the window, where flakes now shimmered with faint light even in darkness. "What happens next?" he asked quietly. Ilara answered softly. "Nature adapts. It always has. But this time, maybe it's adapting to something beyond itself." The static deepened and Lynn's voice barely whispered through. "You've proven reality can rewrite its own rules." Ilara looked at the falling snow. "No," she said. "Reality didn't rewrite itself. It remembered what it was made of. Light." The storm ended as suddenly as it had begun. Silence returned to the Arctic, vast and holy. Ilara stepped outside one last time. The cold biting but gentle. She lifted her hand to catch a single falling snowflake. It rested on her glove. A perfect 8-armed pattern, gleaming faintly like a tiny galaxy. For a heartbeat, it pulsed, matching her pulse exactly. She smiled through tears. "You were never chaos," she whispered. "You were order we couldn't see." Jonas stood behind her, watching as the horizon glowed with a dawn that felt newly born. The sky was painted in fractal light, an aurora shaped like infinity itself. Ilara closed her eyes and let the flake melt against her skin. Somewhere beyond sight, the universe folded, just a little closer to itself.